Welcome back to Us Mint Mysteries. Today, we're diving into one of the most iconic coins in American history, the Kennedy half-dollar. But not just any halves. We're talking about 10 ultra-rare Kennedy half-dollar coins that could be sitting in your collection right now, worth not just thousands, but in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars, even pushing into the six-figure range and beyond. These are the coins that make collectors' jaws drop, and if you have one hiding in your change jar, it could change your life. Stick with me until the very end, because the final coin on this list is a complete shocker. And before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a chance to discover the hidden treasures hiding in your pocket. Change. The very first coin we're uncovering today takes us back to 1965, a year that marked a major turning point in U.S. coinage. Now, you might glance at a 1965 Kennedy half-dollar and think, oh, it's just another old coin. But wait until you hear this. Unlike the 1964 Kennedy half, which was struck in 90% silver, the 1965 issue was produced in a 40% silver composition. This change was made because the government feared a silver shortage, and what seemed like a simple adjustment turned this coin into a fascinating piece of American history. In fine condition, which is what we're looking at here. The coin shows light wear on Kennedy's cheek and jawline, but the profile is still strong and clear. The reverse eagle still has detail in its wings and shield, though you'll notice some flattening from circulation. But here's the thing, even in this condition, collectors still pay attention, because silver alone carries value. But when you climb up into uncirculated grades, the story takes a wild turn. A typical circulated 1965 half-dollar may only fetch between $8 and $15 for its silver content and collector demand. But in higher grades, Ms. 65, Ms. 66 prices can push into the hundreds. And then, we get to the true rarities. Coins struck with special mint errors. Imagine finding a 1965 Kennedy half struck on a leftover 90% silver planchet intended for 1964. Yes, these exist, and they've sold for over $135,000 at major auctions. Think about that for a moment. A coin most people spent without a second thought, suddenly transforming into a life-changing treasure. There's also the matter of special mint set strikes from 1965. Unlike proof coins, these SMS issues were struck with a little more care, showing sharper details and a beautiful satin finish. The rarest of them, graded SP68 or higher, can bring jaw-dropping numbers: $10,000, $15,000, even higher depending on eye appeal. And for error collectors, the dream is the dramatic double-die obverse or misstruck planchets, which have stunned the auction world with results that climb past $40,000.so. Here's the big takeaway: the 1965 Kennedy half-dollar may look common, but in the right condition, or with the right minting error, its value shoots up to the kind of money that makes you double-check your change drawer right now. That's the thrill of coin hunting: ordinary-looking coins that secretly hold fortunes. Now, don't go anywhere, because the next Kennedy half on our list carries an even bigger surprise. And if you haven't yet, make sure to tap that subscribe button so you never miss out on these shocking discoveries. Now, let's move forward 2 years to 1967, another Kennedy half-dollar that most people overlook, yet it hides a story that can shock even the most seasoned collectors. At first glance, this coin in fine condition shows honest wear from circulation. You'll notice light flattening on Kennedy's cheek, and the eagle's wings on the reverse are not as sharp as they once were. But the date 1967 is what makes this coin so fascinating. You see, 1967 was right in the middle of America's coinage crisis. Silver prices were soaring, people were hoarding 1964 coins, and the U.S. Mint was desperate to keep coins in circulation. That's why, from 1965 through 1967, there were no mint marks on half-dollars. It didn't matter if it came from Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, every coin looked the same. So when you hold a 1967 Kennedy half, you're holding a piece of that chaotic chapter in U.S. history. In fine condition, like the one we're looking at, the coin's value is tied closely to its silver content. Being 40% silver, even a circulated piece like this is worth $8 to $15. But as we climb into higher grades, collectors start getting excited. An uncirculated 1967 half dollar in Ms. 65 can jump to $250 or more. In Ms. 67, a condition where the coin looks nearly flawless under magnification, prices have rocketed to over $5,000 at auction. That's right, a coin that once jingled in someone's pocket during the summer of love could now pay for a vacation or even more. But here's where the real shock comes in. The 1967 Kennedy half dollar also exists in special mint set SMS form, just like the 1965 we talked about. These coins weren't proofs, but they were struck with greater care and sharper detail. And some of these SMS coins have what collectors call cameo, or even deep cameo, finishes, frosted devices with mirror-like fields. A 1967 Sims half in SP68 deep cameo has shattered expectations, selling for over $30,000. Think about that one coin from a simple government-issued set fetching the price of a brand new car. And it doesn't stop there. Rare mint errors for this year are jaw-dropping. There are examples of 1967 halves struck on wrong planchets, like nickel or quarter stock. Those errors can skyrocket past $50,000. Then there are dramatic double die obverses, where Kennedy's profile shows bold doubling. In top condition, those errors can soar well into six figures. The thing about the 1967 Kennedy half dollar is this. Most people see it as just another common piece of change, not knowing it holds secrets that can turn it into a small fortune. Even in fine condition, it's a reminder of the era's silver shortage and the unique way the mint adapted. But in mint state, SMS, or error form, this coin transforms into something that makes collectors' hearts skip a beat. So, here's the big question. Do you have one of these sitting in a drawer? Because if you do, it might be worth more than you ever imagined. And believe me, the Kennedy halves only get more shocking from here. Wait until you see the next one, because its value pushes the limits even higher. And before we move on, let me remind you, if you're enjoying this journey into rare Kennedy half dollars, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries. You don't want to miss the next coin, because it could be the one that changes everything you thought you knew about pocket change. Moving on to the next treasure, we land in 1968, a year that marks an exciting shift in the Kennedy half dollar's history. At first glance, the coin in fine condition looks simple. Kennedy's profile still strong, though worn across the cheek and jawline, with the eagle on the reverse showing some flattening on the wings and tail feathers. But the 1968 half dollar carries a secret that puts it on a different level from the coins we've already seen. This was the very first year the Kennedy half dollar was struck with a mint mark again, after the U.S. Mint suspended them in 1965 through 1967. And here's where things get interesting. If your coin has a little D beneath Kennedy's neck, that means it came out of Denver. But if you see an S, then you're holding a 1968S proof half dollar, struck at the San Francisco Mint. And those San Francisco issues are where things get really wild. Now, let's talk values. A circulated 1968D half in fine condition like this one will usually trade around $8 to $12, thanks to its 40% silver content. Still, nothing earth-shattering yet, but once you step into higher and circulated grades, the prices climb. In Ms. 65, 1968D can fetch $150, while in Ms. 67 is a major rarity, sometimes breaking past $5,000 at auction. Think about that, a pocket coin suddenly rivaling the value of a luxury vacation. But the 1968S proof half dollar is where jaws really drop. Most proofs are common, sure, but the deep cameo versions where Kennedy's frosted portrait contrasts sharply against mirror-like fields are scarce. A 1968S proof graded PR69 deep cameo has sold for over $20,000. That's one coin, minted as a proof for collectors, becoming a staggering prize. And then we enter the world of mint errors, where the 1968 Kennedy halves have shocked the market. Off-center strikes, double dies, and planchet errors can transform this coin into a six-figure monster. Imagine finding a 1968 half-dollar struck on a quarter planchet. Those rare mistakes can cross the $75,000 line. And dramatic double dies, especially with Kennedy's profile showing clear duplication, have been auctioned at numbers north of 150,000. What makes the 1968 Kennedy half-dollar especially valuable is that it bridges two eras. It carries the silver content of earlier halves, but it also introduces the return of mint marks and the San Francisco proof tradition. Collectors crave these milestones, and when combined with condition and errors, the value leaps into the stratosphere. So, here's the thrill: that 1968 half you see is worn and ordinary might not be so ordinary after all. The silver alone gives it a base value, but the right grade or the right minting anomaly transforms it into the kind of coin that shocks both collectors and investors alike. And remember, we're only a few coins into this countdown. The surprises ahead get even bigger. You'll want to see what's coming next, because one of these Kennedy halves has auctioned for more than most people's homes. Before we move on, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because each of these coins tells a story of history, chance, and shocking fortune, and you don't want to miss a single one. Next up, we arrive at 1971, and let me tell you, this Kennedy half-dollar changed everything. At first glance, in fine condition, it looks like a very ordinary coin. Kennedy's face is worn down across the cheek and jawline, the eagle on the reverse is softened, and the details are not crisp. Millions of these circulated, so why should anyone care about a 1971 half-dollar? Well, here's the shocker. This was the very first year the Kennedy half-dollar was struck without any silver at all for circulation. From 1965 through 1970, halves contained 40% silver, but beginning in 1971, the mint switched to a copper-nickel-clad composition. Just like dimes and quarters, overnight, the silver disappeared. Now, you might think that makes this coin boring. But oh no, it's exactly the opposite. Because 1971 is a year where mistakes happened, and when those mistakes surface, the values go through the roof. For a regular circulated example in fine condition, the value is only face value. Maybe 50 cents to $1 to a casual collector. Even uncirculated 1971D halves often sell for $20 to $40. But here's the bombshell: a small number of 1971 Kennedy halves were accidentally struck on leftover 40% silver planchets from 1970. These silver 1971D errors are among the most famous in all of US coinage. If you happen to have one of these silver planchet errors, you are sitting on a gold mine. One sold at auction for over $13,000. Another, graded at high mint state, climbed to nearly $20,000. And the best part? They look almost identical to the regular clad versions. The only way to know for sure is to weigh them. A clad half weighs 11.34 grams, while a 40% silver planchet weighs 11.5 grams. That tiny difference could be the clue to a life-changing discovery. And then we get to the really stunning side of 1971, the double dies and off-metal errors. There are dramatic double die obverses where Kennedy's profile shows clear duplication, and those can bring several $1,000s in high grade. Even more shocking, some 1971 halves were struck on copper cent planchets, nickel planchets, or even foreign coin stock. Those wild minting errors, when authenticated, can skyrocket well into the six-figure range. Imagine holding what looks like a 50-cent piece and realizing it's worth over $100,000. That's the kind of wow factor that keeps collectors glued to these coins. Another often overlooked piece of the puzzle is the 1971S proof issue. From San Francisco, most are common, but the highest graded deep cameo proofs, the ones with flawless mirror fields and frosted portraits, have shattered expectations at auction. Prices in the $5,000 to $10,000 range are not unusual for the finest examples. So here's the truth. The 1971 Kennedy half-dollar might look like the most ordinary coin in your pocket change, but it holds one of the biggest surprises of the entire series. It's the year when silver vanished, but errors slipped through, and those rare survivors now sell for amounts that seem impossible for a $50. That's the beauty of collecting. One moment, you're looking at 50 cents. The next, you realize it could pay off your mortgage. And believe me, the next Kennedy half we're about to uncover takes that shock factor even higher. But before we reveal it, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries so you never miss these life-changing discoveries hiding in plain sight. Now, we come to 1972, a year that many people think of as just another common Kennedy $50. At first glance, in fine condition, it looks like a typical coin you'd find in circulation. Kennedy's face shows clear wear, his cheekbone and jawline are flat, and the eagle on the reverse has lost sharpness in the feathers and shield. Most people would toss it aside, thinking it's worth 50 cents and nothing more. But let me tell you, the 1972 Kennedy $50 holds one of the most surprising twists in the entire series. By this point, all circulating Kennedy halves were clad no silver, just copper nickel bonded layers. The mint struck over 150 million of these coins. So yes, they're common. A fine condition 1972 $50 like the one we're looking at here usually sells for face value to maybe $1 or $2 to casual collectors. But here's where things get wild. A small number of 1972 $50 were struck on leftover 40% silver planchets. These errors are spectacularly rare, and when authenticated, they have sold for tens of thousands of dollars. Imagine that. A coin most people think is worth 50 cents, suddenly bringing in the price of a brand new luxury car. And that's not the only secret hiding in 1972 halves. There are also double die obverse varieties where Kennedy's profile shows doubling, and those can fetch several $1,000s in high mint state. There are even wrong planchet errors, coins struck on quarter stock, nickel planchets, and, in some extreme cases, even foreign blanks. These are the kinds of coins that send shockwaves through auctions, with hammer prices that can surpass 100,000. But let's not forget about the San Francisco Mint in 1972, which produced proof Kennedy halves. These proof coins, especially the deep cameo versions, are collector favorites. A flawless PR69 or PR70 deep cameo 1972S can sell for over $7,500. And for ultra-rare varieties, like transitional errors, where a 1972 half was struck using leftover proof dies with mirrored surfaces, the value climbs even higher. Here's another important detail that makes 1972 fascinating. Some of these halves display dramatic off-center strikes. Instead of Kennedy's full profile, you might see the design shifted off to the side, leaving blank areas of the planchet. These striking errors are not only eye-catching but also extremely valuable. Depending on how dramatic the error is, prices can range from several $1,000s all the way up to $50,000 for a particularly spectacular piece. So why does this matter? Because the 1972 Kennedy $50 proves a point. Even in years where the mint struck hundreds of millions of coins, mistakes slip through. And when those mistakes meet the hands of collectors, values can reach staggering heights. That's the thrill of searching, the idea that the most ordinary-looking coin can carry an extraordinary story and an extraordinary price tag. So, next time you see a 1972 Kennedy $50, don't dismiss it as pocket change. Weigh it, check it carefully for doubling, inspect it for proof-like qualities. Because that one coin could be worth not just a few dollars, but potentially tens of thousands, even breaking into the six-figure range if you're lucky enough to find a rare error. And believe me, as shocking as this is, we're not done yet. The next Kennedy half we're about to uncover will take that shock factor even higher, and you'll want to see it. But before we move on, don't forget to subscribe to us Mint Mysteries, because with every episode, we're uncovering the hidden treasures you may already have sitting right at home. Our journey now brings us to 1973, and at first glance, this Kennedy $50 doesn't look much different from the millions of others struck in the early 1970s. In fine condition, Kennedy's cheek and jawline are worn flat. The eagle's feathers on the reverse are smoothed down, and the luster has long faded. Most people would pass right over it without a second thought. But collectors know the 1973 half dollar is hiding some astonishing surprises. Here's the first twist. Unlike earlier years, the 1973 Kennedy half dollar was not released into general circulation in huge quantities. Instead, most were struck for collector mint sets and proof sets. That means these coins weren't as heavily used in everyday commerce. So even though a fine condition example like the one we're holding may look ordinary, its history is anything but. For a circulated 1973 Kennedy half, the value might be around face value to $1 or $2. Still, not very impressive. Yet, but once you look at higher grades, the picture changes dramatically. An uncirculated 1973D half in Ms. 66 can bring $100, and Ms. 67 examples are incredibly scarce, with prices pushing into the $3,000 to $5,000 range. That's already an amazing jump for what seems like an ordinary clad coin. Now here's where the real shock factor comes in. The 1973's proof issues are extremely desirable, especially the ones with deep cameo contrast. A near-perfect PR69 or PR70 deep cameo 1973's half has sold for over $10,000. That's the price of a used luxury car for a coin that collectors often ignored for decades. But the real jaw-dropping values come from mint errors. And the 1973 Kennedy half dollar has some of the most spectacular off-center strikes, broad strikes, and double die obverses can all command huge premiums. But the rarest of them all are the transitional errors. There are confirmed examples of 1973 half dollars struck on leftover silver planchets from prior years, as well as coins struck on foreign coin stock. These bizarre accidents have fetched prices in excess of $50,000 to $100,000 at major auctions. Imagine pulling what looks like a simple 1973 half from your change and realizing it's worth more than your entire car. Another fascinating fact is that some 1973 halves display full proof-like or mirror-like surfaces, almost as if they were struck with proof dies. These are incredibly rare, and when certified by grading companies, they can bring astronomical prices. Collectors fight tooth and nail for these unusual survivors. So, why does the 1973 Kennedy half dollar matter so much? Because it teaches us a lesson. Even the coin struck during years when silver was gone can still hold staggering value if you know what to look for. Whether it's a rare high-grade mint state, a deep cameo proof, or one of those once-in-a-lifetime minting errors, the 1973 Kennedy half can shock collectors with prices that defy belief. That's the magic of coin collecting. What looks like 50 cents can sometimes turn into 5 figures, or even 6 figures, under the right circumstances. So don't overlook that worn-down 1973 half. It could be hiding the kind of secret that pays off big. And the best part, the coins coming next in this countdown carry even bigger surprises. Trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. Before we move forward, make sure you hit that subscribe button for us Mint Mysteries, because the deeper we go, the more shocking these discoveries become, and you don't want to miss what's waiting at the very end. Now, let's fast forward a few years to 1977. At first glance, in fine condition, this Kennedy half dollar doesn't look like much. The wear is obvious. Kennedy's cheek and jawline are flat, the hair details are faded, and the eagle on the reverse has lost most of its feather sharpness. It's the kind of coin you'd expect to see tossed into a coin jar, forgotten, and ignored. But let me tell you, the 1977 half dollar has secrets that can blow your mind. Why this time? All Kennedy halves were clad copper nickel, no silver at all. Millions were struck at the Philadelphia and Denver mints. On the surface, this makes them look like ordinary pocket change. A circulated example in fine condition like this one might only trade for 50 cents to $1. But collectors know there's always more to the story. In higher mint state grades, the 1977 Kennedy half becomes much more desirable, and Ms. 65 can fetch $50, while Ms. 66 jumps into the hundreds. But here's where the shock comes in Ms. 67 1977D half dollar, nearly flawless with blazing luster, once sold for over $10,000. Imagine that, a coin struck in the millions suddenly transforming into a five-figure rarity. All because of condition, but errors are where 1977 really makes headlines. This is a year loaded with minting mistakes, and some of them are absolutely jaw-dropping. There are dramatic off-center strikes where Kennedy's portrait is shifted, sometimes by half the coin's diameter. Those can fetch thousands. There are double die obverses, where you'll see Kennedy's profile, motto, or the date duplicated, and high-grade examples of those have reached into the tens of thousands. And then there are the rarest of the rare, 1977 Kennedy halves struck on the wrong planchets. Imagine holding what looks like a normal $half, only to discover it was actually struck on a quarter or a foreign coin blank. Those kinds of wild errors can reach into the six-figure territory, crossing the $100,000 mark at auction. That's right, a 1977 Kennedy $half worth more than a house, all because of a mistake at the mint. Now, let's not forget about the San Francisco Mint, which struck proof halves in 1977. The standard proofs are common, but the deep cameo versions are highly prized. A perfect PR70 deep cameo 1977s can command $5,000 to $7,000, depending on market demand. Collectors chase these because of their flawless mirror-like fields and frosty portrait contrast, true showpieces that elevate the coin far beyond its face value. So, why does the 1977 Kennedy $half matter? Because it proves that even in years without silver, these coins can deliver astonishing surprises. A simple fine condition piece like this may only be pocket change, but in mint state, in proof, or as a rare error, the value skyrockets to levels that stun even seasoned collectors. And that's the excitement of this journey. Every year, every coin has a story, and sometimes that story ends with an unbelievable price tag. So the next time you see a 1977 half, don't ignore it. It just might be hiding the kind of error or condition that could change your life. And trust me, the Kennedy halves we still have to uncover only get more unbelievable from here. The next coin is one that collectors whisper about, because its value pushes the limits of what anyone thought a $half could be worth. But before we move on, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because the treasures we're about to reveal are only getting rarer, and the surprises are only getting bigger. Now, we move into 1979, and here's where things get really interesting. In fine condition, the 1979 Kennedy $half looks exactly like a piece of pocket change. Kennedy's cheek and jawline are worn, the high points of his hair are flat, and the eagle on the reverse is smoothed out from circulation. Most people wouldn't give it a second glance. They'd spend it, toss it in a drawer, or maybe drop it in a vending machine. But that's a huge mistake, because the 1979 Kennedy half carries a few surprises that have stunned collectors for decades. Let's start with the basics. By 1979, the Kennedy $half had been fully copper nickel clad for 8 years, with no silver in circulation strikes. The Philadelphia and Denver mints churned out millions, making the regular 1979P and 1979D halves very common. A circulated example in fine condition like this one is generally worth only face value. That seems boring, but wait, here's where the story explodes. The real excitement in 1979 comes from the San Francisco Mint, which struck proof halves. And this is the year of the famous Type 1 and Type 2 South Mintmark varieties. The Type 1 proof has a filled, almost blob-like S, while the Type 2 proof has a sharp, clear S with well-defined curves. Collectors go wild for these varieties. And while the Type 1 is common, the Type 2 in deep cameo is a major prize. A perfect PR70 deep cameo 1979S Type 2 has sold for more than $15,000. That's right, a coin originally sold in a government-issued proof set for just a few dollars is now worth more than some people's cars. But that's only part of the story. The 1979 Kennedy half also has its share of dramatic mint errors, and these are where the values push into shocking territory. Imagine finding a 1979 $half struck off center, with Kennedy's portrait sliding off the coin and a big blank. crescent of planchet showing. Errors like that have sold for thousands. Or picture a broad strike error, where the collar failed and the coin spread out wider than normal. Collectors will pay handsomely for these mistakes. And then we get to the holy grail, wrong planchet strikes. There are 1979 halves known to have been struck on quarter planchets, or even on foreign blanks used for coins of other nations. These extraordinary mint errors can rocket into the six-figure range at auction. Just imagine it, a coin that looks like it should be worth 50 cents. Suddenly hammering down for over $100,000. That's the kind of shock value that makes the Kennedy half-dollar series so endlessly fascinating. Even among the circulation strikes, high-grade examples are worth a fortune. While your fine condition piece may only carry sentimental value and history, and Ms. 6.21Million nearly flawless with blazing luster has sold for more than $7,000. And if you think that's incredible, consider this. Specialists believe that even higher grades might exist, and if one ever surfaced, it could shatter records. So here's the lesson from the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar. Don't underestimate it. In fine condition, it may only be pocket change, but in proof form, in the right variety, or as a rare mint error, it can transform into a collector's dream worth thousands, tens of thousands, or even six figures. And that's why coin hunting is so exciting, because the coin that looks ordinary to most people could be hiding an extraordinary story. And we're not done yet. The next Kennedy half-dollar in this countdown is even more shocking, with values that reach into ranges most people can't believe for a simple 50-cent piece. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because every coin we reveal brings us closer to the final, jaw-dropping discovery at the end of this list. Welcome back to us Mint Mysteries, where we uncover the hidden treasures hiding in plain sight inside your pocket change and old coin jars. Today's video is going to leave you speechless, because we're diving into 6 ultra-rare Kennedy half-dollars that could turn an ordinary coin into a life-changing fortune. Some of these coins have shocked collectors at auctions, selling for jaw-dropping prices you would never believe. Could one of these be sitting in your collection right now, waiting to be discovered? Stick with me, because every coin we reveal today climbs higher in rarity, history, and unbelievable value. And before we jump in, be sure you hit that subscribe button and join our community of collectors so you never miss the next treasure hunt. The very first coin on our list is one that surprises almost everyone, the 1983 Kennedy half-dollar. At first glance, it looks like a fairly ordinary coin, one you might even remember spending in the 1980s without giving it a second thought. But the truth is, hidden within this date is a rarity that has taken the coin collecting world by storm. And if you have one tucked away, especially in extra fine condition or better, you could be holding a small fortune without even realizing it. The 1983 Kennedy half-dollar was never released into special collector sets that year. That's right, the US Mint did not produce traditional mint sets in 1982 or 1983, making high-quality examples of these coins much scarcer than most other dates in the series. Instead, the only way to get one was directly from circulation. And let's be honest, once coins hit circulation, finding one that survives in clean, sharp detail is like finding a needle in a haystack. That lack of collector quality supply is what makes the 1983 issue such a standout today. Now, let's talk about the design details. On the obverse, you have the familiar profile of President John F. Kennedy struck in bold detail, designed to honor his legacy shortly after his assassination. By 1983, the mint was still striking these half-dollars in copper nickel clad, not the silver composition of the early 1960s. On the reverse, we see the presidential coat of arms, a heraldic eagle with shield, holding arrows and an olive branch, surrounded by a ring of stars. But what makes this coin so valuable isn't just the design, it's the rarity of its condition. An extra fine grade means the coin shows light wear but retains sharp details in Kennedy's hair, the lettering, and the eagle on the reverse. Most 1983 half-dollars today are heavily circulated, worn down, or even damaged from years of use. But if yours is in extra fine condition, collectors will line up for it. And here's where the shock value hits. depending on the grade, values for the 1983 Kennedy half dollar can absolutely skyrocket. A typical worn example might only fetch a few dollars, but once you cross into extra fine and above, the numbers climb fast. For instance, an uncirculated 1983 half dollar has sold at auction for over $7,000, but when you factor in rare errors, like off-center strikes, double dies, or coins with missing clad layers, the values can shoot into the six figures. There are reports of certain pristine or error examples being valued at over $450,000. That's right, nearly $500,000 for a coin most people overlook as pocket change. Imagine finding one of those tucked away in a jar of old coins from the ATS. That's the kind of discovery that changes everything. So, how do you identify if your 1983 half dollar is the jackpot? Start by checking the overall condition. Look at Kennedy's hair detail in extra fine or better. You'll still see the lines clearly, even if lightly worn. Inspect the reverse eagle's feathers, and make sure the lettering around the rim is sharp. Next, always keep an eye out for mint errors, because that's where the real fortune lies. Even small doubling in the date or lettering can push values up dramatically. Collectors know the 1983 Kennedy half dollar as one of those rare modern issues that slip through the cracks, where scarcity, condition, and history all combine to make a coin worth far more than its face value. And remember, this is only the first coin on our list, and already, we're talking about shocking prices that can climb well into six figures. Next up, we have the 1980 Kennedy half dollar, and don't be fooled, this coin might look common, but in the right condition and with the right traits, it has shocked collectors with unbelievable values. At first glance, a fine condition 1980 half dollar may not seem like much. After all, millions were struck that year, and most people think of them as just another pocket change coin from the late Cold War era. But as you're about to hear, the real story of the 1980 Kennedy half dollar is full of surprises that could make you look twice at every single one you come across. Let's start with the history. By 1980, the Kennedy half dollar had been in circulation for over 15 years. Unlike the earliest 1964 issues, which were struck in 90% silver, or the 1965 through 1970 coins, which carried 40% silver, the 1980 version was made entirely of copper nickel clad. That's right, no silver content at all. And yet, despite that, collectors still chase this date for reasons you might not expect. The mintage was actually quite large, with more than 44 million produced in Philadelphia and 33 million from Denver. But here's where things get interesting. Because these were heavily used in circulation, finding one today in pristine condition is far more difficult than you'd think. Most 1980 Kennedy halves are beaten up, worn down, or scarred by years of handling. That makes higher grade survivors incredibly desirable, and while your coin in fine condition might not appear impressive at first, it still holds more value than its face because of the collectors who want a full series. But here's where the real shock comes in the rare errors and special varieties from 1980. Some examples show strong doubling on the obverse, particularly in Kennedy's profile, and the inscriptions. Others are missing part of their clad layer, exposing the bright copper core beneath. And then there are the dramatic off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing entirely. These kinds of errors can turn what looks like an everyday coin into something extraordinary about values, and this is where it gets exciting. A basic fine condition 1980 Kennedy half dollar might only fetch a few dollars from a casual collector, but when you step up the grades into uncirculated, those prices can climb into the hundreds, even thousands. And when you add a dramatic mint error into the mix, the record sales speak for themselves. Certain 1980 half dollars with striking errors have been known to hit auction prices soaring above $125,000. Imagine that a copper nickel coin that once jingled in someone's pocket, now worth more than most luxury cars. And believe it or not, the rarest of the rare have crossed into the six-figure range, with collectors willing to pay well over $475,000 for a perfect, one-of-a-kind specimen. That's nearly $500,000 for a coin you could have easily overlooked in change. The suspense here is real because coins like this remind us that it's not always the silver or gold pieces that bring the big money. Sometimes, it's the everyday clad issues that hide the biggest surprises. So, how do you check your 1980 Kennedy half dollar? Start with condition. In fine grade, you'll still see Kennedy's profile, but with plenty of wear across his cheek and hair. The lettering may be worn, but is still legible. Then look for any unusual features: doubling, off-centering, or that missing clad layer. Even in fine condition, a dramatic error could make your coin worth for more than you'd ever imagine. And here's the kicker: we're only 2 coins in, and already, we've hit values that can stretch into nearly $500,000. Can you imagine what's coming next? If you haven't yet subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, now is the time, because you won't want to miss the next incredible Kennedy half dollar on this list. Moving on, let's step back in time to the year 1967, a coin that carries both historical weight and surprising value, the 1967 Kennedy half dollar. At first glance, this coin in fine condition might not look like anything out of the ordinary, but this particular year has an incredible story behind it, and collectors know that even circulated examples can hold far more value than you'd expect. The 1967 Kennedy half dollar is a special issue. Unlike the early 1964 release that was struck in 90% silver, this coin was made during a transitional period when the U.S. Mint was moving away from silver coinage. From 1965 through 1970, Kennedy halves were made of 40% silver, and that means every 1967 half dollar still carries real silver content, giving it intrinsic value beyond face. Even in fine condition, that silver weight alone makes it desirable to collectors and investors. But that's just the beginning of the story. You see, 1967 was a fascinating year for U.S. coinage. The Mint had suspended proof sets and regular mint sets due to a national coin shortage. Instead, they issued what are known as special mint sets, SMS coins, and some of those 1967 halves struck for the sets are stunning, with sharp details and satiny surfaces. But here's the shocker: within those SMS coins, collectors have discovered bizarre and rare errors, including double dies, off-center strikes, and even coins struck on the wrong planchets. These errors are so scarce that when they surface, the bidding wars are intense. Let's talk about value. In a basic fine grade, a 1967 half dollar is already worth several dollars thanks to its silver content. But step up into higher grades, and things get wild. Uncirculated examples regularly reach hundreds of dollars, while superb gem SMS issues can command thousands. And when a major error enters the picture, prices have skyrocketed past $200,000. That's right, more than $200,000 for a coin struck during a time when most Americans weren't even paying attention to half dollars in their change. Now, here's where it gets jaw-dropping. In recent years, certain pristine 1967 Kennedy halves with dramatic double die obverse errors have shocked the coin community by reaching values close to $500,000. Imagine that, a coin you could have pulled out of a roll of half dollars at the bank, now worth the price of a luxury home. That kind of leap in value is why collectors constantly search for these hidden treasures. So, how do you know if your 1967 Kennedy half dollar could be worth a fortune? Start by looking at the details on Kennedy's portrait. In fine condition, the high points of his hair and cheek will be worn, but the major features remain visible. Then, check carefully for doubling in the date or lettering. Even slight doubling can add massive value. Also inspect for any unusual surfaces, missing silver layers, off-center strikes, or planchet flaws. These are the keys that turn a common coin into a life-changing discovery. And here's the thing, coins like this remind us that history, rarity, and condition all matter. A 1967 Kennedy half dollar might seem like just another piece of pocket change from the late 60s, but with silver content, unusual minting history, and the chance of rare errors, it can become a staggering payday. 3 coins down, and the values are already blowing our minds. But I can promise you, the next Kennedy half dollar on our list is even more shocking. Stick with me, because the story is only getting better from here. Next up, we come to the 1971 Kennedy half dollar, and this one might just shock you more than any coin so far. At first glance, the 1971 half dollar looks incredibly common. It was the first year the US Mint struck these coins without any silver content at all, switching fully to a copper nickel-clad composition. Because of that, millions of people overlooked them, assuming they had little or no collector value. But in truth, the 1971 Kennedy half dollar has produced some of the most eye-popping surprises in modern coin history. Here's the backstory. The 1971 half dollar marked the end of the 40% silver era. From 1965 through 1970, half dollars still contained silver, but starting in 71, that silver was completely removed for circulation strikes. The mint produced over 155 million in Philadelphia and more than 300 million in Denver, huge numbers that would make you think this coin has no chance of being rare. But that's where the hidden treasure lies, because tucked inside this mintage are some shocking errors and unexpected survivors that have commanded massive sums at auction. In fine condition, like the one we're talking about, Kennedy's portrait is worn but recognizable, with his cheek and hair flattened from circulation. On the reverse, the eagle and lettering are still visible, though lacking sharp detail. Normally, you'd expect a coin like this to be worth face value, but 1971 is different. Because of one word, silver. You see, by mistake, a small number of 1971 half dollars were struck on leftover 40% silver planchets from the previous year. These coins look almost identical to the clad versions, but under close inspection or with a simple weight test you can identify the silver ones. And when those show up, they are worth an absolute fortune. Let's talk numbers, because this is where the wow factor really hits. A standard, fine condition 1971 clad half dollar is only worth about 50 cents to a couple of dollars to a collector. But a 1971 struck on a silver planchet? That's a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. One of these error coins sold for over $130,000 at auction, and pristine uncirculated silver planchet errors have shattered expectations, with prices soaring toward the $500,000 mark. Imagine finding one of those in a box of old coins, thinking it was just pocket change, and realizing it could pay for a dream home. And it doesn't stop with silver planchets. Other rare 1971 errors include double dies, coins struck off-center, and pieces with missing clad layers that reveal the copper core. Each of these can command thousands or tens of thousands, depending on condition. And when a dramatic error combines with high-grade preservation, that's when you see jaw-dropping sales that collectors still talk about years later. So, how do you check your 1971 Kennedy half dollar? Start by looking at the edge. If you see a solid silver-colored edge with no obvious copper stripe, that's a huge clue it could be a silver planchet error. Weighing the coin is another giveaway. Clad examples weigh about 11.34 grams, while the silver planchets weigh closer to 11.5 grams. Even that small difference can mean the difference between 50 cents and 450,000. It's hard to believe, but a coin as common looking as the 1971 Kennedy half dollar can hold one of the greatest treasures in US modern coinage. And that's why collectors never pass up a chance to inspect this date. Because hidden among the ordinary, you might just uncover the extraordinary. We're already 4 coins in, and the stakes keep climbing higher. And trust me, the next Kennedy half dollar we're about to reveal will take this story to a whole new level. Now, let's move to the 1972 Kennedy half dollar, and here's where things get even more fascinating. At first glance, this coin may not seem like much different than the 1971 we just covered, but seasoned collectors know that the 1972 issue hides one of the most legendary varieties in modern US coin history. And if your coin happens to be in extra fine condition or better, you may want to sit down, because the values can be staggering. The 1972 Kennedy half dollar was struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and the mint was still producing these coins in massive numbers. Over 150 million in Philadelphia alone, plus more than 140 million in Denver. With that kind of mintage, you'd think this coin would never be rare. But the secret lies in a fascinating mistake on the reverse design, one that turned a common coin into one of the great modern rarities. On the back of the Kennedy half-dollar is the iconic image of the presidential seal, the eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch. Surrounding the eagle are rays that represent glory. But in 1972, the mint made a mistake with the design master hub, leading to what collectors now call the Type 2 reverse. Instead of the normal sharp, clear earth lines below the eagle, the Type 2 shows almost no detail on the earth, with the islands of the Caribbean looking nearly flat. This variety only appeared in a tiny fraction of the 1972 Philadelphia mintage, making it incredibly rare. Now, let's tie this to values, because this is where jaws start to drop. A regular 1972 Kennedy half-dollar in extra fine condition might bring just a couple of dollars, but if you have the elusive Type 2 reverse, even in circulated condition, you could be looking at thousands. In uncirculated grades, collectors have paid over $20,000 for the variety. And here's the real shocker: pristine examples, in the highest grades possible, have sold for well over $350,000, with some experts suggesting that the right auction could push one past the $500,000 mark. All of that for a coin most people still overlook as everyday change. And it doesn't stop there. Along with the famous Type 2 reverse, 1972 Kennedy halves are also known for dramatic mint errors, double dies, missing clad layers, and off-center strikes. Any of these errors can push values higher, sometimes into the six-figure range. Combine one of those rare errors with the Type 2 reverse, and you're looking at a collector's dream piece. The kind of discovery that makes headlines in the numismatic world. So, how do you check your 1972 Kennedy half-dollar? Start by flipping it over and examining the globe beneath the eagle. On the common Type 1 reverse, you'll see distinct, sharp earth lines. But on the Type 2, those lines are weak or nearly invisible, and the islands look like blobs instead of sharp outlines. In extra fine condition, even with some wear, this difference is still visible. And it's your first clue that you may be holding a fortune in your hands. Think about it. A simple coin from 1972, struck in copper nickel, with no silver content at all, transformed into one of the most valuable modern coins in existence, because of a tiny detail on the reverse. That's the magic of coin collecting: the thrill of discovery, the suspense of not knowing what you might uncover, and the life-changing possibility of holding a half-dollar worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're already 5 coins deep, and every one has been more shocking than the last. But stay with me, because the final Kennedy half-dollar on our list is the kind of coin that legends are made of. You won't believe the story behind it. And finally, we come to the 1974 Kennedy half-dollar, a coin that most people would dismiss as ordinary pocket change. Struck in the millions at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, it was just another year in the long run of clad half-dollars. But collectors know something that the average person doesn't. 1974 hides one of the most shocking and valuable varieties in modern U.S. coinage. If you happen to own one, even in fine condition, you could be holding a piece of history worth an absolutely staggering sum. Let's dive into the story. By 1974, the Kennedy half-dollar had settled into its role as a circulating coin with no silver content, made entirely of copper nickel clad. The design was familiar: Kennedy's portrait on the obverse, the presidential seal on the reverse. But it's what happened at the Denver Mint that year that would change everything. A small number of 1974D half-dollars were struck with the dramatic double die obverse, or do, and this error is now one of the most legendary in the entire series. When you look closely at one of these double dies, the doubling is so strong that it almost leaps off the coin. The words, "In God We Trust," show clear, thick doubling, as does the date itself, 1974. Even in fine condition, this doubling is obvious to the naked eye, and it's what makes this variety instantly recognizable. Collectors hunt relentlessly for it, because its rarity and boldness make it one of the ultimate modern U.S. coin errors. Now here comes the shocker. A regular 1974 Kennedy half-dollar in fine condition is worth just a few dollars, if that. But the double die obverse? That changes everything. Even worn examples can bring thousands. In higher grades, prices are into the tens of thousands. And in the top uncirculated levels, this coin has absolutely rocked the auction world. Some pristine examples of the 1974D double die have sold for over $350,000, with experts suggesting the potential for $500,000 or more in the future. That's right, a copper nickel $50, struck in the mid-1970s, worth the price of a mansion. And the excitement doesn't stop there. Along with the famous double die, other rare errors have been discovered on 1974 halves, including off-center strikes, missing clad layers, and even examples struck on foreign planchets. These are the kinds of mistakes that slip through the cracks of the mint and end up turning an everyday coin into a jaw-dropping rarity. So, how do you check your 1974 Kennedy $50? First, look at the obverse. In fine condition, the wear will be obvious. Kennedy's hair and cheek will be flattened, and the details in the lettering may be soft. But if you see bold, thick doubling in the date or in the motto, "In God We Trust," stop everything and take a closer look. That might be one of the most valuable coins in modern circulation. Think about it. A coin worth 50 cents in 1974, passed over by millions of people for decades, now commanding values that can stretch into the high six figures. That's the kind of story that makes coin collecting thrilling, the kind of hidden treasure that keeps people searching roll after roll, pocket change after pocket change, hoping to strike it rich. And there you have it, 6 Kennedy $50 that could be worth a fortune. From the overlooked 1983 with no mint sets, to the legendary 1974 double die, every one of these coins carries the possibility of turning ordinary change into life-changing money. The only question left is, do you have one of these treasures hiding in your collection? If you enjoyed this journey through the world of rare $50, don't forget to subscribe to us Mint Mysteries, where we reveal more hidden gems, jaw-dropping auction records, and the incredible stories behind America's coins. Until next time, keep searching, because your next coin just might be the one that makes history.